Hello everyone, and let's have a quick talk about class balance and the impact of class balance in Star Wars: The Old Republic. Of course, recently, we say recently, it was a few weeks ago now, the patch came out, it was 5 point whatever, which changed quite a few of the classes. Now, we have here the Star Parse stats page up again. We'll put a link in the description, but you can see the link at the top. If I type it in, type a link in. Now we'll put it in the description for you. I'm not that cruel to you. So this is the this is boss. This is a pair. Well, no, in fact, no, it's all bosses. And this is PvE, not PvP, we should point out. It isn't an entirely accurate picture of the whole game. It is just a slice, really, of the PvE element of the game. And again, not everyone uses Star Parse, and most of the things come from hard mode ops and nightmare ops. You can see here, 60% of it there, roughly about sort of above 50% of it at least every single week. It does have data for the last 16 weeks up until, yeah, it does. I think it's 12 weeks is what it does. Yeah, no, 15 weeks is what it does. 16 weeks is what it does. Goes up until the 31st of July, which is today, as I'm recording this. As you can see, the date down there, Monday the 31st of July. So it is quite up to date. Now, interesting trends that we've seen here. Most of this, again, is Star Parse as a tool, mostly used by progression raiders, as you can see there, HM and Nightmare. Really, most people doing HM. Occasionally, people doing story mode. Very few people. Really, it's not really necessary for story mode. It is a performance sort of analyzing tool. It does analyze things like DPS, HPS, damage taken, things like that. It can be used as a boss timer as well. It can do timers, certain things. Nobody really plays 16 man ops. I guess nobody has 10 Core i7s. So maybe the new Core i9 will run it, or maybe Threadripper. Maybe that'll run 16 man ops. That's a test for AMD and Intel. Can they do 16 man ops? Of course, it doesn't really use the graphics card that much, SWTOR, so it's not really a GPU test. So we're going to take a look at the class distribution. So DPS class distribution, which I find quite interesting. Interestingly, the Vanguard is the lowest represented class at 7%. I mean, normally it's the Scoundrel. I mean, it's only 1% ahead of the Scoundrel, 1.2% ahead of the Scoundrel. However, that's quite significant, really. The most popular one is the Commando. I think these are just Republic terminology that we're using here, because it does have factions, most people playing on the Empire. This is not really a surprise. You can see here that ever since they nerfed the Commando / Mercenary, you'll see the numbers fall here. You see it was around 30%, almost 33%, until the nerf came in, and then it drops to 21, 19, 18% now, just under 19% of commandos. You can see, you can tell where the nerf came in, can't you? Or where the data was. I guess people are moving, yeah, maybe people moving towards the Sentinel. Numbers seem to be up on the Sentinel. They're up. Are they up on the Gunslinger? Gunslinger 17, 17, 7, 16, 15. Gunslinger's going down as well, down to 14. So Gunslingers and Commandos. The Sage is taking a nice upswing, because of course the Sage got buffed. So you can see here 6, 7%, and now we're into sort of double digits for the Sage. It was the least played range DPS. Again, this is just DPS. So the most played melee, of course, is the Sentinel. Shadow is second, Guardian third, incidentally. But yeah, the Vanguard has took a pounding in this expansion. Again, it is quite an example of class balance. Again, you're never going to get it perfect between that, but you're seeing, ever since the nerf went to the Mercenary / Commando, you're seeing the numbers drop. The Vanguard is picking up. The Vanguard did get a buff. It was as low as sort of 4%, 3%. It was below 4% at one point, so it is picking up in terms of DPS. Healers, you can see the Sages, again, were almost 50% of the healers were sages, 50. Yeah, but an average of say 50% sage healers, and then comes the nerf. 47, 46, 44, 40, 39, and 34. So that's, you could argue the healers are a bit more balanced now, because they're almost in a sort of nice balance there. Almost 30% each, which is kind of what you want, really. You don't want half the healers in the game to be the one class when there's only 3 healers in the game. Really, we don't want that. I mean, so I guess that's what they were trying to achieve with the nerfing of the Sage / Sorcerer. And it has, by the looks of things, in PvE anyway, looked at that. There's no... I don't think there's much data available for PvP. I don't really find that much data, so, but you're seeing a PvE decrease in the Sages and an increase. I guess people are re-rolling both Scoundrel and Commando, because the Scoundrels have been going up at a steady rate as well as the Commando. They're up to 28%, well, 29 the previous week. But yeah, they've been sort of steadily going up. Have they in the Scoundrels? I guess the Commando is the favoured healer of choice now. Scoundrel's still decent for AoE healing though. I mean, the Sage did get a big nerf to both their single target and AoE healing, so it's not really a surprise. This is a sample of 10,618 characters here. That's 14,000 the previous week, 12,000. I'm guessing because this week isn't complete. I'm guessing because, you know, today's the 31st, so maybe they'll include... They haven't put today's in, because I guess in Europe anyway, it's, you know, it's almost peak time. So I guess you're seeing 15,000, 15,000, 19,000, 18,000. Yeah, it's roughly sort of, so maybe this one isn't the most accurate, but we can take a look at the previous weeks, which is a more accurate representation. Again, we're seeing a decline there, and a steady decline. The tanks, last time we looked at this in 4.0, the tanks were fairly well balanced. You said it was roughly a 30% sort of representation of each tank. Each tank was in the 30s, but here you're seeing the Vanguard lagging behind, really, here. The Shadow being the most popular. But yeah, every single time. Shadow is in the 40s. Vanguards are in the 20s. Vanguard is struggling a bit there, although it is coming back a little bit. But yeah, into the 20s, we've got the Guardian in the 30s and the Shadow in the 40s. So 4.0 is a bit more balanced in terms of tanks, in terms of their representation in endgame PvE. So it's interesting to see that. Interesting you see the DPS. You've got sort of 24,000 DPS. That's this week. You've got 10,618 healers and 7,588 tunes. That's in the same week. Bear in mind a raid needs more DPS, so there's also going to be more DPS. You've got 2 tanks, sometimes 1 tank if Eternity Vault is there, which it is included in that. I think Eternity Vault is the most popular raid. KP is the most popular raid that week. I guess because it was maybe in the group finder. Yeah, EV generally, EV is the blue line, so EV generally is the most popular raid. We're scrolling far too fast. Apart from there is KP, I guess KP, yeah, EV or KP are generally the 2 most popular, so you maybe only take 1 tank, so that again might skew the results in favour of sort of DPS, but again, you'd be taking an extra DPS, of course. Generally, you take 2 healers, 4 DPS, 2 tanks. Again, the majority of people do 8-man, that's what the data says there. But 90-odd% most of the time, 92, 93. Most people doing 8-man. So again, 2 tanks, 2 healers, 4 DPS, or 1 tank, 5 DPS, and 2 healers generally is the way to go. We can get a nice look at how the classes are performing, or how the specs are performing. The Marauder is not too badly balanced, you would say. I mean, obviously Fury doesn't get a look in, really, but you know, 47% Combat Carnage, Watchman Annihilation 48%, that's okay. It says that the 2 specs are, you know, both viable. Obviously, one is the other spec isn't, it's more of a PvP spec, but you're seeing them being pretty close, and that's good. We want choice. You know, you want choice. As for the Guardian DPS spec, again, very few people play Focus or Rage in PvP. You can see where Serenity and Hatred got its buff, can't you? I mean, you can see there, it's, you know, sort of 90% in the 90s for Infiltration, and then you start to see the buff for Hatred, and then you see it coming back a little bit. So it does have an impact whenever they buff a spec. More people having a go, but I guess, you know, the overwhelming majority are happy with Infiltration / Deception. You can kind of see it here as well. It was almost, you know, Balance Madness went ahead when it got buffed there, and then it kind of fell back a little bit. But you can see there, when a spec gets buffed, you can see more people playing it. Again, here with the Vanguard as well. You've got Pyro got buffed, Pyrotech, Plasma Tech got buffed here, and again its representation increases. Same with the Merc, Gunnery or Arsenal got nerfed. See, one of the reasons why I think the Merc is just so skewed is because Gunnery and Arsenal are arguably, I would say, one of the easiest DPS specs in the game to play, I would say. And Assault Specialist / Innovative Ordnance is one of the hardest to play. So you've got the sort of two polarizing specs. I mean, even when IO was outperforming Arsenal, you tended to find most people played Arsenal because it's easier, I think, to get better results for less effort with Arsenal. I mean, you can see where it was buffed there, or where sort of Arsenal was nerfed, should we say. I think IO did get a slight buff, but there you go. You've got the Merc in general is quite a good beginner class, and it is the most popular class for Raiders. It is one of the easiest. I mean, again, it had 33% representation, almost a third of the player base, over a third of the player base there. Were raiding is that, and that's just DPS. That doesn't include the healers as well, and they have good representation. You can see here as healers that they were the second most represented, and now they're becoming the most represented in terms of the healers. So in terms of a good beginner class, you know, the Commando / Mercenary isn't a bad choice really, because they've got one of the easiest DPS specs in the game, and they're quite a versatile and quite a strong healer. And again, that's borne out by the data that we're seeing here. But I mean, I would like to see changes to be made to this. I think that don't make Gunnery or Arsenal more complicated. I think that making IO, maybe making it a little less energy intensive, might be the thing. You can see here Scoundrel, which is the next class to be balanced in the next patch. This is the Scoundrel Operative. Most people playing Ruffian. Ruffian's in quite a good place right now, actually. It's pretty decent. Again, the majority playing Ruffian. 25%, 75 is not too bad. The Sniper is an interesting case. Started out with half of the snipers playing Virulence or Dirty Fighting. Now it's kind of, it's still there, but sort of marksmanship is making a big comeback there. Sort of, I mean, engineering is kind of got its little niche. I like engineering personally. It's quite decent. It's got a lot of sort of 30% sort of representation in raids, but you're seeing sort of Virulence being eaten into a little bit by sharpshooter or marksmanship there. Which is an interesting. I always find these stats quite interesting to see what people are actually playing. It is automated statistics got to the last 16 weeks. Data is updated daily. So there you go. Maybe the 31st hasn't been added yet. That's why it's so low, because maybe it gets added at midnight. Who knows when it gets added. But I always find these things interesting, and they're interesting to look at from a class balance perspective. It's nice that they did buff the classes that are underrepresented. Obviously, balance takes into account PvP as well, which we don't have access to the data for PvP. So we can't really bring you that, so I don't have access to it. And I don't really do PvP anyway. But we'll take a look at the, I guess we'll take a look at the SWTOR Keeler now that we're back doing some PC gaming. We'll take a look at that maybe in the coming weeks. Take a look at the SWTOR. Might take a look at the Merc Keeler. We'll see if we can do our flashpoints and our our master mode flashpoints in our non 242. You certainly won't be raiding HM, but it seems like the trend is going towards the mercenary healer and away from the SWTOR healer at the moment. I'd like to see the Vanguard tank. I think needs a buff. I think it's clear from that data that they need a buff. You know, Plasma probably would like to see get a buff as well. I just need to see what they could do with Focus Rage for the Focus or Rage for the Guardian Juggernaut. Be interested to see. It's kind of sad that Hatred. I mean, it just shows you they ruined the Vanguard. I said it. I said they took away the flavor of the Vanguard and ruined it. And then you see it's in 5.0 the least represented class in a raid. I said that you might as well play a Sentinel now. Just go play a Sentinel because you're not as good at kiting things as you used to be. You don't have as much defensive abilities ever since they nerfed the shoulder cannon. And they nerfed our mobility massively, nerfing your range. And that's the thing, it ruins the class. And you see the result. Just play a Sentinel or a Shadow. You know, because they're performing quite well. The Marauder will always generally perform quite well, but, you know, take away the flavor of the class, take away its identity, and you end up just playing what does the higher numbers. Ends up just being a decision that comes down to metrics at the end of the day. And we just pick it based on meta rather than whether the class is fun to play. You know, I would rather pick a class that can do more. And it was the same with the Shadow, the Hatred Assassin, Hated Assassin I call it. They ruined that. They ruined it in 3.0. And again, it just take away what made the class unique. And now look at it, it barely gets a look in now among players. Infiltration's alright. You know, I think Deception Infiltration's okay. I really liked Hatred in 2.0. It was a bit OP. But it was nice to have that flexibility and that ability to do, you know, minor range damage. Same with the Vanguard. The Vanguard was a lot of fun. And I think that's one of the reasons why I don't play the game so much. So I'll leave you with that thought, really, that nerfing class mechanics does have a detrimental effect. I mean, the Vanguard still does decent DPS, but the fact that it can't do a lot, or can't do as well a lot of the things that it could do, and maybe you're offloading that to other classes like the Shadow, like the Marauder. You know, it has an impact. But anyway, that is all for this video. So thank you for joining me, and we'll see you again soon, and goodbye.